Hello, everybody, and good afternoon. Welcome to our webinar, Preparing Students for On and Off the Job Training. We've got quite a few of us here at the moment, but we might just wait 5-ish minutes just for some more people to join. And also our guest speaker today is having a little bit of tech issues, so we're just waiting for him to get his speaker on. We'll just give it another minute or two. I hope everyone is having a fabulous day. What did we have for lunch? All right, I might just start and we can introduce Kent when he hopefully gets here. So before we begin, I'd like to start by acknowledging the Wurundjeri people, the traditional custodians of the land where we meet today, as well as the traditional owners of the land that you are viewing from. And we pay respects to elders past, present, and emerging. And we also respect the continuation of cultural, spiritual, and educational practices of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. So a little bit about us. So I'll do this one about us. We are AATIS, the Australian Apprenticeships and Traineeships Information Service. We are funded by the Government of Department Education and Training and Skills and Employment. And we provide accurate, relevant, and timely information and resources to stakeholders across the Australian apprenticeship spectrum. This includes students, job hunters, employees, career advisors, and people working in the industry. So back to this one, a bit on using GoToWebinar. So on your screen, you should see the GoToWebinars box. If you're having any difficulty hearing us, you can dial in on your phone rather than using your computer audio. There is a question box where you can ask any questions or chat with our staff. We will be answering questions in the chat, and we are happy to send you links or further information to the resources we're discussing today. At the end of the session, we will go over any questions that are relevant to the whole audience. If you're experiencing any technical difficulties, please let our staff know in the chat box or by giving us a call on 1-800-338-022. And a few parts of this presentation will be using the live website, so apologies if it is a little bit slow. So in today's session, we will be discussing preparing students for both on and off the job training. I'm Phoebe Woodward. I am the marketing officer here at AATIS, and joining me hopefully will be Kent Willis from Apprentice Recruit. Apprentice Recruit consultants have over 23 years of experience in the recruitment industry and have placed nearly 7,000 candidates into work. Kent is very active in the Australian apprenticeships industry, and he hosts a YouTube channel and a podcast discussing job search tips, hiring tips, industry updates, breaking down the data, and many other topics covering the Australian apprenticeships industry. I highly recommend checking him out on LinkedIn. He makes very interesting content there. So in today, we're going to be talking about some employment prep and considerations. Hopefully Kent can come in and talk about what to expect on the job and what to expect off the job. And then I will be discussing some AATIS resources to help support you and students and job hunters. And then at the end, we will do a bit of Q&A. Let's dig into the good stuff. So employment prep and consideration. The first thing to consider when looking into completing an Australian apprenticeship is the type of training you would like to complete. So when helping a student or a job hunter look into their career development, we would like to identify whether they want to do an apprenticeship, a traineeship, or a school-based apprenticeship. They're the ones we're going to touch on today. So some common factors that they all have is all of these you will be earning a wage, training with an employer, and working towards an accredited qualification. All of them have access to a range of financial incentives. They're a fast track to your career, so they're a stepping stone to higher education. You can use a lot of these qualifications and take them to university or somewhere else with you, and they equip you with skills for life. There are a lot of stories of people going, doing their apprenticeship or traineeship, then potentially maybe going to university, but then falling back on that apprenticeship or traineeship, as most of the time it is still valid. So they do differ. An apprenticeship, we think that's more suited towards students or job seekers who are more interested in traditional trades, potentially carpentry, maybe baking or hairdressing, and enjoy practical hands-on work. Traineeships, they could be more suited to ones interested outside of traditional trades, so things like retail, business, IT, and traineeships can be completed in just about any workplace. The qualifications range from a Cert 2 to a diploma level, and the diploma level is the more, you are more likely to go from a diploma to a higher education. I've just gotten a message from Kent that he is on. Kent, are you able to take your microphone off and say hello?
Hey Phoebe, how are you?
Oh, good. I'm good. How are you?
Got me? Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Hopefully everyone else can. So I'm going to keep going and then we'll move on to your slides next. Is that okay?
Sounds great. Perfect.
And last traineeship type that we were talking about is a school-based apprenticeship, which is the ASBA, what we call, and that is a fantastic way to kickstart your career. You still have the option to complete your high school qualification, doing your certificate, so you can do, you know, pre-apprenticeships or start your apprenticeships while also doing, you know, your VC and that kind of thing. And this just needs to be discussed if it is an option at the high school, as some high schools don't offer it, but there are definitely some. There will always be one that will in your area. Some considerations to make. One thing that is so super important is choosing the right career. It is important that our career aligns with our personality, work type, and interests. There are so many resources out there that can help students and job seekers identify these qualities. When we choose the right career or have done research into our personality types, that makes a much more sustainable career and one that we will enjoy throughout our lives, hopefully. And one of these resources is the Work Type Explorer or Career Interest Explorer that can be found on the AA Pathways website, and I'll touch on that a bit later. Something else, another consideration, super important, our literacy and numeracy skills. Do your literacy numeracy skills results align with your chosen career path? So I'm sure we are all aware that there is a great misconception that literacy and numeracy skills aren't as valued in a traineeship or apprenticeship. But as I said, that is a misconception. Many qualifications require a very high level or a high level of literacy and numeracy skills. Each qualification is different, so it is important to identify where we're at with our education. So then you can either go ahead with your training if you do have the knowledge, or alternatively, you might need to develop your literacy or numeracy skills. And there are so many resources out there for that. We do have a few other considerations to touch on, but I think Kent will do that. So Kent, if I can move on and you can get going on yours.
Hey Phoebe, thanks. Yep, sounds great. And yeah, sorry, I missed the intro there. I've had a few technical difficulties here, and anyway, looks like we're on track now. So, and I thought before I just get into my slides there, something I was going to touch on that we'd spoken about, Phoebe, just to give it a little bit of an overview of my background, not only in the employment field, but my background as far as the traineeship is concerned, and having completed G12, and then from there, not having known about what pathways were through to university. And so I basically came out of Year 12 not knowing where to go or what to do. Essentially, I managed to get myself a admin traineeship for a government department down in Canberra. And I suppose this is where I can speak from real life experience of having gone through a traineeship program, and that led me into a career. And I suppose the person you're talking to now certainly wasn't the person back then. I was a bit of a ratbag trainee. My trainee coordinator knew me quite well. But out of that 12-month traineeship program, I ended up getting Training of the Year, and then I've since had a career within this sort of industry, and it has in fact set me up in a career. So just a little bit of more background there on, I suppose, why I'm also a bit more passionate about this particular subject, having been a bit of a product of the system.
Yeah, you're a perfect example of what we're trying to touch on here.
Yeah, and I think that's it's valuable. I think even for any of the industry liaison officers or students out there to understand that you don't necessarily need to be the A student out there to then certainly have a career that can stem from whether it be a school-based or whether it be a traineeship or an apprenticeship. So
yeah, exactly.
I'm a live example. So looking at the what to expect on the job. So there's a few things that we can cover off here. So we've got up there, the top there, the employer expectations. And a lot of those are quite simple, but some people may not consider them before they actually start work. And that's whether it be arriving on time or in fact arriving early, and understanding what the expectation is from the employer's point of view about what their standard working hours might be. So that way, when you first start off, you're both on the same page. Something that we hear a lot of, and especially in the construction trades, even having a plan around smoko or morning tea, and also your lunches. Because some people don't think of that and think, oh, well, we'll go to the smoko van every week or every day, but that's quite an expensive exercise, especially when you're on an apprentice or a trainee wage. So even taking into consideration, how you're going to cover off on that, making sure that you're hydrated during the day, all those sorts of what seem like quite minor things, but an employer, when you first start with them, they're going to expect that you're going to know that, and they're not going to have to teach you that. Whether the employer themselves have a mobile phone policy, because a lot of companies these days certainly do, and it's probably the #1 complaint from employers about apprentices or trainees on the job, that they spend way too much time on their phone. So you need to understand what the expectations are around that, and even things with your mobile phone around social media, as in, can you put up posts of what you're doing at work, or, is that acceptable or is that not? Because I know that there's been some people in the past have actually lost their job because they've posted something on social media that that wasn't kosher. So again, worth exploring those sorts of things with your new employer, and even simple things like, what do you wear? So are there certain requirements of clothing or PPE or whatever that you might need to wear when you first start? So there's certainly worth broaching when you first start with an employer, or at least keep those things in the back of your mind as questions that you can ask even at the interview stage with an employer. Looking at the employer responsibilities, they obviously need to provide you with a safe working environment. And if you're not sure what that is for your particular industry, then there's certainly some resources that you may be able to look up online through some simple Google searches, or, as we'll touch on later in the presentation, there are certain companies that you'll be linked to as part of a traineeship or an apprenticeship, where they can certainly guide you in that regard as to what the expectation might be around working in that safe environment. And it's part of the process of an employer signing you into either a traineeship or an apprenticeship, that somebody from the training organisation actually needs to go and do an actual site audit to make sure that the workplace is safe and that they have the resources that are needed for you to be able to do your qualification. We've got the clear expectations. So I think that's a conversation that needs to be had between the employer and the trainee or apprentice as to what their expectations are about what they're going to be doing on the job. Again, we've talked about the time factor, the working hours, and also the phone policy. But a lot of it will be based around, again, what they're physically going to be doing on the job. So that way you all start off on the same page when you first kick off, knowing what the expectation is going to be. And that may fluctuate as you go through your career with the particular employer, but that's where you need to, I suppose, go back and have those conversations once again if the expectations seem to be different from when you first start. We've got sign up in there, and I suppose when somebody first starts in either a traineeship or an apprenticeship, then they need to be aware that there is a process that they will need to go through in signing particular paperwork, and that's with either the Apprentice Support Network or the actual registered training organisation. Excuse me. And so it's worth asking when they first start as to what the expectation will be around that in when that will happen. And I know certainly through our agency, we like to get that all tied up within the first 2 weeks of somebody starting with a new role in an apprenticeship. So we try and nip that in the bud quite early to make sure that everyone's on the same page and that it's all done quite quickly and quite efficiently. So therefore, you know that you're actually engaged in a proper training agreement, a training contract. Looking at the employability tips, I could spend probably 3 days talking about this, to be honest, with what it is that we do. But we've got a couple of things down there, Facebook and social media, and that's become more and more prevalent over the years as far as we will stalk people on social media, and that's prior to us putting through their application to a potential employer. So the main thing we're looking for there is that somebody's either locked their social media profile down so that you can't really see too much, or certainly if they've got an open profile to make sure that there's nothing untoward that's on Facebook or Instagram or a whole range of different platforms these days that we have access to, where we can start to do, I suppose, some background checks on people before an employer will even see them. And we know from an employer's perspective, they will also stalk people on social media these days just to see what their lifestyle is like prior to wanting to pick up the phone or get them in for a face-to-face interview. So I highly recommend, my main recommendation there is just lock down your social media profile so that no one can see anything. Resumes, again, this is another topic that we could talk about for hours. So I'll just go through some really quick tips about resumes. Probably the main one there where it's got you check your contact details, have somebody else do that. So I know even myself over the years when I've had my own resume, I've read it so many times that you then become blind to typos and errors that are within your own resume. So it's always worthwhile in getting somebody else to have a look over your resume to make sure the two main things that you need to make sure are correct on there are your phone number and your email address, because there's a lot of correspondence these days that's done via email. And then from there, it's then going through and making sure that there's no typos in there as well, which for a lot of positions, we don't get too caught up in that, but certainly if it's more, say, administration-based roles, especially if they're working in like legal or accounting areas, then those little mistakes really stand out from an employer's perspective. And that's something that's just generally not acceptable if there's any typos, whether it be in their cover letter or within their resume. The other thing I suggest is if you're applying and you are a junior, which I think most of our audience will come under this, but I recommend put your date of birth on there. And that's so that the employer doesn't need to work out whether you are a junior or not. They can work out how old you are, and because there's a lot of positions out there for both trainees and apprentices where they are looking for a junior, and rather than making it difficult for an employer to establish whether you are or not, then it just makes it quite clear how old you are and that you then fall in the junior category. I also recommend too, because again, a lot of, especially trades, are requiring the candidates to have both a driver's license and their own transport. So if you do have those, then again, specify that, they'll be quite specific about that in your resume, and especially if you have a manual driver's license these days, because there's a lot of employers out there where, again, I do talk more towards the trades, that if you need to jump in the boss's car to go and pick something up, then 9 times out of 10, it's a ute, and so therefore you have to have a manual driver's license. And it's becoming harder and harder to find juniors these days that do. So if you do have a manual license, then it's also worth pointing that out on your resume. I also talk a bit about qualifications that you may have got as a student when you're in school. And I see a lot where they may do business courses or diplomas. I see a lot that have done, say, sport and rec, certificate 3 in sport and rec when they go through. And a lot of those, well, some of those, I should say, aren't overly relevant when you come out of school to the sort of work that you might be applying for. So I'll generally say to somebody when they're preparing their resume to actually take the qualifications that aren't relevant to what it is that you're applying for, take them off your resume, because it's not relevant, then it's really not worthwhile having there. And you also want to make sure that when you're doing a cover letter, that you also make sure that you've got everything relevant to the specific job that you're applying for, and make sure that you change that every time you are applying for a position, because there's nothing worse than reading through somebody's cover letter saying, yes, I wish to apply for the apprentice mechanic position, and it turns out that it's for an apprentice chef job. You pretty much get you go into the no pile because you just haven't spent that little bit of attention to detail in getting that right on your application. So moving into some of those other considerations that we've looked at there, and this is, I suppose, being mindful about some of the people that you may be working alongside of and also working for, because obviously we've got quite a diverse workforce these days. So it's, I suppose, steering clear of the things I've got down here are all being sensitive to people's cultures, their ethnicity, I always say that word, gender, sexual orientation, those sorts of things. And it's being very aware that you don't know people's backgrounds and their circumstances. So therefore, you need to be very careful about what you talk about in the work environment, and making sure that you essentially don't offend people. And it might be quite inadvertent. It could be a simple joke that you make, but again, you need to be sensitive around other people and about the backgrounds that they may be coming from, or the different orientations that they may have these days. So that's quite an important one. And again, you just don't want to find yourself in a position where you're in trouble or you lose your job over a silly comment that you make or a silly joke that you make while you might be on the job. You just don't want to offend anybody. So that's pretty much what I suppose an employer is, a lot about what an employer is expecting from you on the job, and even to get the job in the first place. So if you want to head over to the next slide now, Phoebe, we can move on.
There you go.
Excellent. So yeah, so what to expect off the job. And there's a range of different ways that both traineeships and apprenticeships are delivered these days. And I know back when I first did my traineeship, I was a typical example of I was 3 days on the job and 2 days off the job. So 3 days where I was essentially at work learning, and then I had 2 days where I went off to a private business college where I did my, I suppose you would say, theory component of my learning. And that's evolved over the years. And so your typical models of having to be in a school-based environment can be a lot different these days. And there's even training providers out there that we do what's called blended learning. So, and I think you touched on it earlier, Phoebe, that the structure between a traineeship and an apprenticeship are quite similar. They're all competency based, and they have both those components where you're doing both on and off the job training. There's a lot of training providers that are out there these days where they will, they don't do a classroom-based structure anymore. All of the training is actually conducted out in the workplace. And that's both your theory component as well as your prac. So your employer is there to provide you with the the majority of the practical training that you need to do, and then the registered training organisations that then come in to do the again, the off-the-job training component. They will take you through the theory and also still some practical, especially for some companies out there that don't have the full scope or range of duties, to be able to teach you all of it on the job. And a quick example that I use there is, say, carpentry, for instance. It's very rare that you see in carpentry where you have a company that will do, say, stairs or pitched roofs. It's becoming a bit of a dying art. And so therefore, you'll need to then go to either TAFE or the private training company, and they will then teach you those specific skills, and you'll do both the theory and the practical component through the actual training organisation themselves. So there's a reason why a training organisation may, or I suppose what they may do is pick up some of the slack where the employer can't teach you because it's just something that they don't do. Another example there is painting and decorating, where wallpapering these days is a very rare trade, but it still needs to be covered off as part of your painting apprenticeship. And so therefore the training provider themselves will teach you how to do wallpapering if the employer themselves don't actually do it. We just mentioned they're competency based, and with a lot of apprenticeships that are out there, at least a lot that we deal in, there could be anywhere from around 20 up to around 36 competencies that need to be completed throughout the apprenticeship over a period of 3 to 4 years. And what that basically means is a simple one could be occupational health and safety or communication in the workplace. They're a fairly common competency. And once you've actually proved to both your employer and also the training organisation that you are competent in that area, they can then check that off, and then you can move on to your next competency. And you'll continue doing that throughout your apprenticeship. And then once the 20 or 36 or whatever it happens to be for your particular trade are ticked off, that's when you can be deemed as being competent in your qualification, and then you can be signed off and then receive your qualification. So. And that varies. So I think the least amount I've seen within a trade is around 15, and the most has been up around that sort of 36 to 38 competencies. There's a lot of support that's provided to trainees and apprentices that they're probably not even aware of, and the majority of those are through their apprentice support network. When you're signed into a traineeship or an apprenticeship, you have to go through official paperwork that is lodged with the government to indent you into your, or you sign a contract into that traineeship or apprenticeship. And the company that do that are engaged by the government to go through that process for you. And those particular agencies have a lot of mentors that also sit in the background. So when I mentioned earlier on about even a safe working environment, then they're the ones that will need to, and the training organisations will need to be the ones to actually go in there and make sure that everything is kosher. The employer are a legitimate employer, they've got an ABN number, and they provide the safe work environment and also the scope of being able to actually teach you the trade that you're going to be signed into. So that's their main function initially, but then moving on from that, if you find that there are any difficulties, whether it be with the employer, whether it be with the training, whether it be with wages, whatever it happens to be, then you can ring that particular organisation and have a discussion with them and voice any concerns that you might have about what's happening in your particular traineeship or apprenticeship. And a lot of people don't realise that that resource is there, and it's a very useful resource. There's a person that initially signs a contract, but then there's again, there are mentors that are also sitting in the background. And it may not necessarily be work related. It could be financially related. It could be relationship related. Again, it doesn't necessarily need to pertain to what's going on the job. If you've got any other issues that are going on in life that you need some support with, then they will have additional resources that they can also tap into in getting you through the program. And you can also get that from your registered training organisation, where they have additional resources. And I know, Phoebe, you touched on the numeracy and literacy earlier, that if you do find that you're having some difficulties with the theory component of your training, they can provide some additional resources for you to be able for you to go through your training and yeah, I suppose assist you through that the theory side. So just be aware that there's a whole range of different resources that are available to you, and they're all free. They're all provided as part of the program. We've touched on, or mentioned there are additional qualifications. So while you're going through and doing either your traineeship or apprenticeship, there might be the opportunity to gain further qualifications as part of that process. A couple of simple examples that I have down here are things like even your first aid or your CPR, or it could be more technical as far as certain tickets for your trade. Could be a license, could be truck license, could be forklift license, machinery licenses like bobcats, backhoes, excavators. It could be working at heights, confined spaces. So again, it all depends on the particular qualification that you're undertaking, but there's generally some access to some further qualifications within your actual trade itself. So it's worthwhile exploring with your employer whether they have the ability to support those additional qualifications, and a lot do. A lot quite encouraging of their apprentices or trainees picking up those additional skills and qualifications, because they can become a benefit to the employer as well. So there's a whole range of them out there. So that's pretty much what I have for the off-the-job component. Is there anything else that you wanted me to sort of touch on there, Phoebe?
No, I think you did pretty well with that. No, everything's covered. So
Yep.
Thank you for that. I'm going to move on to the next slide now. So I'm just going to go over a few AATIS resources that we can help going through this preparation and helping us get to the next stage and where we want to be. All of these resources are going to be linked in a post-webinar email that everyone will get, so everyone will get all the links and information. So I'll just kind of touch on them. We at AATIS, we have so many resources that we have and offer, but these are just a few that I think will be really specific to helping prepare students. So the first one is our Steps to an Australian Apprenticeship page. They are steps that will explain the process of getting an apprenticeship or traineeship from the research stage to when the training actually begins. So each stage you'll be able to click on, and they will have links and resources to everything you need basically. So the steps are research, preparation, job hunting, and sign up. They will be able to direct you from resume tips to fair work in the end. Really gets you from A to B. The other thing, which I did mention and is super, super important, is literacy and numeracy tests. We have many of them on our site. They're actually one of our more popular resources that we have. So they are general industry-based literacy and numeracy quizzes that illustrate the level of skill when required when undertaking an Australian apprenticeship or traineeship. Each quiz is 10 questions long and should take approximately 10 minutes to complete. Each quiz was developed with the help of industry insiders, TAFE, the secondary schools, and they're not a formal assessment, but they're a great indicator. And we do highly recommend doing that if you are looking into a specific career. How to find an apprenticeship. I might actually click on this one. So this one can be a bit of an example of what our pages look like. Hopefully you guys can see. So this is our how to find an apprenticeship page. This has information that, finding an apprenticeship online, some social media, job hunting tips, job hunting offline and ways to get around that, approaching group training organizations, and there's also a link here how to find a group organization, and that'll shoot you straight through there. Tapping into networks and a guide for employees. We have a lot here, some adult apprenticeships, hunting, FAQs, we've got quite a bit. I'll go back to the slide. And post-recruitment information. So basically, if you're starting the job, first of all, congratulations, well done, woohoo. And the information on this page will help you understand what might happen when you start your role. So this again will give stuff on Fair Work and your hours and resources that you can reach out to. What I talked about before was our career interest explorer. I know this isn't up there, but this will be linked with the rest of the emails. This is basically a quiz that helps you find which types of work you most enjoy and what types of apprenticeship or traineeship occupations will best suit your interests. It's just a very personal quiz that really, what am I trying to say? It'll pinpoint what best careers you can do. So yeah, this is a great tool to help identify your work type. So before we do some Q&A, I think it's really important for people to know that there are resources out there to help assist them with any mental health issues or struggles. There are some resources that are industry specific here, like Mates in Construction and TradeMut. Some maybe for younger people, like Reach Out Australia. Some general ones like Lifeline and Beyond Blue, as well as Kent was talking about, the student services at TAFEs and RTOs and your ASINs mentors. They're really, really helpful, and they will always be able to assist students with whatever they're going through, which is really awesome. So I'm going to open up the Q&A. If you have any questions, please chuck them in the question bar or the box, and we'll be able to answer them. Or if you don't have any questions now but have questions later, you're always welcome to email us or give us a call on our line. I might just maybe give a few minutes, and if you have any questions, chuck them in.
In the meantime, Phoebe, while they're shooting those through, there's a couple of other things that I didn't sort of touch on, especially around the actual getting out there and trying to find a traineeship or apprenticeship. And there's a couple of resources that I wanted to mention there. And I spoke about Facebook and people keeping their Facebook profiles quite clean. The Facebook itself can be a great resource as far as reaching out to friends and family to let people know that they're actually interested in trying to find work and to try and find it in certain areas. So social media can actually be a very, very good tool as far as sourcing a job, not only through Facebook Jobs, which that's a growing platform, but also just within their own network. And there's a video that I've got on YouTube. Well, there's a couple of videos actually, because I know that this can be a bit of a minefield for a lot of people about who does what. So I've got a who's who in the zoo on my YouTube channel, and that describes the different organisations and what they do, because people do get quite confused as to what's a RTO and what's an ASIN and what do they do and what's a recruiter and what's a GTO, and there's a whole range of different terms that are used. But there's also a video I've got on there which is how to get a job, and it only goes for about 6 minutes, and it's the, I suppose, techniques that I've used over the years in how to get out there and try and find some work. And there's some very basic principles that are in there that I think if people do follow those principles, then they won't need an agency or anyone else to actually be able to help them. They'll be able to get out there and they'll be able to find it themselves. And I've had some people that have actually watched their video and then come back to me down the track and said, yeah, hey, just to let you know that we've actually found some work. So there might be a couple of resources that might be worth having a look at.
Beautiful. That was really awesome, Ken. Are you able to, so we've got a few questions. You talked about date of birth. Any tips applying for mature age students?
Yeah, watch my video about how to get a job. It's part of the reason I put it up there, to be honest, because I've got another video which is the truth about adult apprenticeships, and it's quite a challenge to get work in that space. There are a number of companies out there that actually do prefer mature age over juniors, so it's not a complete waste of time at all. But you need to, like any apprenticeship or traineeship, in that, especially around the mature age, I would suggest that pick an industry that you are interested in, and then look at doing a pre-vocational course, so a Certificate 1 or a Certificate 2 in that particular field, because what it does is it shows direction on your resume. and that you've taken steps to getting at least a qualification in that industry to then lead you into an apprenticeship in that space. So whether it be a certificate in plumbing or electrotechnology, anything along those lines, I'd be looking at those pre-vocational courses and then watch that video, because I've had 3 people that I know of that have contacted me back that were looking for an apprenticeship in electrical, and they were all 28 years old. They all lived on the Gold Coast, and all 3 of them got a job, and they watched that video.
Well, there you go. Proof is in the pudding.
It is, to be honest, but it's being a dog at a bone.
Yeah, and we did get a question of what your account name is and will there be a link for the resources. So there will be a link for all of these resources. We'll link Kent's YouTube channel, but do you want to say your account name? Yeah,
it's, if you look up Apprentice Recruit on YouTube, and then you'll find us.
Beautiful. And so, when students register with a group training organization, what is kind of the process there? What are they there for? And also, will a GTO put students in touch with potential employers?
Is that one for me?
Yep.
Yep, cool. So yeah, GTOs, group training organizations, I suppose I use the term quite loosely, and I actually sat down and had a conversation with one this morning. And they're, I suppose, what I classify as almost the labour hire of apprentices. And I don't want to offend anybody by saying that, but their job is to, they will get potential apprentices and trainees will register with them, and then they'll go out to market and they'll look for an employer that will look to then host that particular apprentice or trainee. And that could be on a short-term or a longer-term basis. And if it happens to be on a short-term basis, then it's the group training's role to then find another host employer for them once they've actually finished up. So it might only be for a 5-week contract that they're going to work. Once they come out of that contract, then they need to then go out and find another employer that they can then place them with. And that will happen for the duration of their apprenticeship or traineeship.
Yes. Group training organizations are awesome in the fact that they will make sure that you are able to finish your qualification with everything that you need and give you those mentors and people and support, I think.
Correct. Yeah, they've generally got a lot of support in the background there. You've normally got I don't know if they call them a case officer, but somebody that you're allocated to, and it's their job, as you say, Phoebe, to get you through the whole process of getting your qualification.
Yeah, I think, and especially, I mean, throughout a pandemic, a lot of people found themselves losing their apprenticeships and things going belly up all the time. But having someone that's there to try and cover that for you would be just super important and super amazing.
Yep.
We did have, we've got a lot of people just asking if it's going to be recorded and for links. So for everyone, this is going to be recorded. It will be posted on our social medias and there will be links sent off to everything so that you can get back in touch. Okay, cool. So I think I'm going to cut the questions there and we can just, if anyone has any more questions, they can email either Kent or AATIS and we will get back to you. But yeah, all of this will be dispersed out. So I would like to thank you, Kent, for coming on and speaking with us today. You have been absolutely amazing, so informative and just a beautiful voice, if I don't say
myself. Oh, thank you.
No, it's been really awesome. And thank you everyone for coming. I hope that you guys got a lot of information.
Thanks for having me. It's been great, and again, hopefully there's been some good information and some resources that people can then utilize and get themselves a job.
Awesome. All right. Well, have a great afternoon, everyone.
Thanks.
Bye.